Hey guys, it's Jeff and welcome to today's video. So today, as the title suggests, we are going to revisit a video that I did about a year ago talking about these things. These are the Muslady wireless guitar system. They're a wireless kit for guitar that were very cheap. I got those for like 50 Canadian dollars off Amazon, and I made two videos talking about them. I made a review when I first got them, and I made a follow-up video about a month later just letting you know that they hadn't broken yet. And these videos have been pretty popular, so I figured today, it's been about a year since I've made these videos and since I've had these things and used them, so I thought I would revisit this review and let you know how these things have been doing over the past year. I'm also going to cover a couple of the comments that came up in these videos, especially the recurring ones, because the same question seems to pop up every now and then. So maybe just to talk about my experience with the Muslady so far, I've done about 5 or 6 shows with them, played indoors, outdoors, guitar, bass, and every time they've performed flawlessly. In every situation that I've been in, there hasn't been any issues with interference. They haven't cut out. The battery life was good. Typically, the kind of shows that I play will play for about an hour to an hour and a half per set, and then we'll take a 20-minute break in between. So what I would typically do, just to be on the safe side, is I would plug them in during the break. However, I have seen a couple of comments in the other 2 videos where people are mentioning that their battery life was pretty poor, something like south of 2 hours. So that hasn't been my experience, but then again, these things are pretty cheap. One thing that you'll find in many videos and in many comments too is that there are a bunch of companies that make these under different names. Moon is one of them that I've seen, Kajako or Kajavo or whatever they're called. So there's a couple companies that basically just drop ship these things from China. So I can expect that the quality assurance on these isn't going to be that great, and therefore it is very likely that you will find some specimens out there in the wild that aren't performing up to spec. To that, my recommendation that I've given to a couple of you guys is buy them from a reliable supplier. I got them from Amazon, so if I ever had any issues with them while they were still under warranty, I wouldn't be worried about it. My buddy Fred has also purchased a pair after he saw mine, and those have also been working pretty good. Fred's haven't been used as much, however. Since he left for Europe, he hasn't really played with them, I believe. So that's a pretty good use case for, you know, pretty heavy use versus not as common of a use. I actually used this in a live stream too. If you remember, a couple of months ago I did a live stream with these and they worked pretty good as well for like 45 minutes straight, so that was also great. Other than that, a pretty common question I get is how do they affect the sound, and the truth of the matter is sound tends to come out a little hotter out of the receiver than it does coming into the transmitter, but other than that, it's really not that significant. I don't think it would be something that would be really perceptible unless you were really looking out for it, and it's something that can easily be drowned out in distortion and other effect pedals and things like that, so I don't really believe that it would be much of an issue. However, if you are a purist and you really want to have that perfect sounding thing, then you're probably going to want to stick to a cable, because it definitely introduces some changes in the sound, and that's something to be aware of. Other than that, looking through the comments, something I didn't go into much in the previous videos that I figured we could talk about in this video is the difference between 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. These operate at 2.4 gigahertz. That is why you get a lot of interference with common household items like modems and routers and phones and microwaves and all that fun stuff. 5 gigahertz isn't as common, although it is getting more common as it comes along. The biggest difference between 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz is that typically at 5 gigahertz you get a lot less interference because the frequency is higher, but the range tends to suffer a little bit. For this kind of cheap stuff, typically you'd go with 2.4 just to get a little more range, because range is more the criterion that you're looking for over quality with something like this. There are other options on the market that operate at 5 gigahertz, and I figure if you have a lot of problem with interference in your use case, you might want to give those a try, but you have to understand that you will definitely suffer on the range, which for some people might not be a big deal. To me, range was sort of a secondary criterion that I wanted to make sure that was covered, but I just wanted something that was cheap first and foremost, and second, that sounded not too bad and that had some pretty decent range. The reason being, I do a lot of gigging, and I'm bringing a lot of stuff with me, so a lot of that stuff can get stolen, can get broken, can get forgotten, can get lost, and for all those reasons I try to keep the gear that I use as cheap as possible while still sounding kind of good. That way if it gets broken or stolen or lost or whatever, I don't have too much of a cost incurred to replace it, because that comes out of my pocket, and the wages on shows right now aren't all that great, even before COVID-19. After COVID, we can only imagine what the rates are going to be. It's probably going to be disastrous, so you do want to keep those costs low, and I'd much rather invest invest a little more money in the guitar and in the amp, and not too much in something like this, which is fairly fragile and easy to steal. That's why I was kind of looking for the price first and then hoping for the best as far as performance goes. Now, as I said, I've been using them for about a year, and honestly, the performance hasn't really changed or declined. Whenever these break, honestly, what I will probably end up doing is just buying another pair, because at this price point, I figured it's just the easiest path. Now, is there a use case for some more expensive wireless systems like a Shure system or a Line 6 G10 or G30 or G90 or whatever you want to go with? To that, I say definitely. I mean, in some use cases, reliability would be important, more range would be important, protection from interference would be important. One thing you have to realize with this is that there is no radio adjustment, so if it picks up interference, it picks up interference. All you can do about it is try to figure out what the source of the interference is, and if you can shut it down, good. If you can't, then you're stuck with it. A more expensive product would have like some radio adjustments that you could dial in, change the channels and things like that to help you out with fixing some interference issues. With these, you can't really do it, so that's one reason why you might want to go with something a little more expensive. Obviously, if you want to get something that's a little more reliable, then these are probably not your best option. And a lot of people ask me if I was going for something a little more expensive, what would I get? And honestly, probably like a Line 6 G10 or something like that. I would think that would be the next step up from something like this. Those are significantly more expensive, and so for the reasons I've elaborated on earlier, I would still probably just buy another pair of these. And with that said, guys, take it easy, and I will see you Sunday for the next music video. Peace, guys.